Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Makeba, host of the Healthy Woman Podcast, a talk therapy platform curating healthy conversations so that women like you can serve God while also pursuing an optimal state of holistic health. All right. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Healthy Woman Podcast. It's your girl, Dr. Makeba. I am your host. Now, if you remember, we had a part one. I was speaking with the amazing Nisha Mohip, who is a great financial wellness expertise guru, accountant, all the things. We were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago on episode 11, and now we're back for episode 12, which is part two. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this conversation with Nisha, and we're going to pick up where we left off. So, Nisha, welcome back, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm pumped up now. Continue this conversation.
I love it. I love it. So, we were talking about the last time we were talking about transferring like those skills and
Mhm.
knowledge and different things with women, and how to almost find value in who they are. So we're talking about financial unwellness, talking about financial wellness, how all of these things maybe can contribute to one another. I kind of want to kind of segue into this conversational topic, which we talked about unwellness. So my question to you, being in the space that you were in, do you think that financial wellness or unwellness, and I termed it unwellness, I know that's not really a term, but it fits. So do you think that financial wellness or unwellness can be a byproduct of mental or emotional unwellness or vice versa? And I know you're not like a mental health expert or anything like that, but you've been in this field long enough and talked to enough people and even went through your own journey to kind of connect the two or the three to
Mhm.
even add in some, I don't know, just some ideas about how we can fix that. If you do think that that's something that's been connected. So what do you think?
I I think it's a combination of uh, our mental wellness. I do think it's a combination of physical, and it goes back to education. I am the person that I give people grace because I need it, right? And I am a believer in pay for the things that you need before you need them.
Mm,
So I invested in a therapist 2 years ago because I wanted to become a better communicator for my clients.
mhm,
And communication for me has been like a self journey because I come from a childhood where you talk back, you get popped,
mhm,
right? You don't, you know, talk out of a child's place, right? Not knowing that communication is needed the moment you get to high school.
mhm,
And so by suppressing a lot of the communication skills that I feel like I should have been taught, I had to learn it in my 20s in corporate environments. And it built up a level of resentment that kind of came out in my client relationships where when there was conflict, I would just suppress it. I didn't know how to communicate because I didn't want to,
mhm,
create or stir up problems.
mhm,
But I realized as I started to get like asked to do speaking engagements and people asked about my thoughts, they were like, girl, I'm like, you like what I'm talking about? Like, that's not normal. Because we're
right.
so used to being hushed and told to be quiet that you think that your opinion doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so I got a therapist to communicate better with my husband and my clients and to create boundaries because I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Mm,
So when you don't like conflict and you build up resentment for situations that you just weren't prepared for, it comes out for me as stress. And stress turns into sicknesses for me. And so I was getting sick back to back and I was like, I have to figure out a way to de-stress.
mhm,
So I started working out. I started to get a nutritionist. And then I realized, there's hormonal imbalances. And then I started to get depressed because
mm,
I'm like, but the water system and our food and da 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 da. So what can you control?
mhm, mhm,
And so I had to have like a safe environment to talk to a therapist about healthier ways to communicate about my wants, my needs, and what boundaries I needed to create so that I wasn't constantly putting myself in a stressing cycle. So I think that we have to become more selfish,
Yeah.
especially Black women, because we are trained to be the project manager, whether it be paid or unpaid, of many different communities.
Yeah.
And we take on so much. I think we're great problem solvers, but at the end of the day, we have to say, I don't have the energy for that. I don't have the mental capacity for that right now.
Yeah.
I wish you the best. I have to disconnect, because it goes back to protecting. If I continue to gain weight because I'm
Mhm.
stressed out and not eating,
Mhm.
am I really going to live long enough for me to actually serve in my purpose? No. So we have to go back to being selfish. And at the end of the day, society is already selfish.
I
So
think
why
I
can't you be?
let's talk about that term selfish. Let's talk about so I love what you just said. I think it's necessary. So I like a lot of what you just said. So let me just go back a couple of things. Number one, you talked about you had to get a therapist because you chose to get a therapist because you wanted to learn how to better communicate with your clients,
Mhm.
which I think was a huge point of awareness for you. And I'm really big on awareness. I speak about awareness from a lot of different levels and angles, because I feel like awareness is that threshold to us actually making better decisions, whether it's about us or whether it's about other people, whether it's about relationships, interacting with other people. You honestly cannot make the best decision when you are unaware with the shield of like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm good. Everything's fine with me. I don't need anything. You're not able to be your best self. And so I'm
Mhm.
just a very big proponent for this place of awareness. And so when you said that you had to seek out a therapist because you became aware,
Mhm.
if you will, that the ways of communication that you had been operating in were not useful for you with clients, I think is a big thing for us to sit in for a minute, because I can absolutely 100% agree with you in that it took me a long time to become okay with communicating with people. And I'm not quite sure that I'm all the way there yet.
Mhm. Same.
Um, Communicating with people in a way that doesn't look like confrontation if the two of us don't agree.
Yep.
And then for a very long time, I kind of steered away from actually having necessary conversations with people
Yeah.
because I didn't want to be um what's the word? I didn't want to I didn't want people to misunderstand me.
Yep.
And then I remember a pastor of mine years and years ago, he asked me about fear. And I said, well, I really don't function in a place of fear. And I said, but one thing that I have an issue with is I don't like when people misunderstand me. And I remember
Mhm.
years ago, this is probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would, if I wrote something, if I made a post on Facebook, if I did something and I felt like it was going to be misunderstood, I would immediately take it down.
Yep.
And my pastor said, whether you know it or not, that's fear.
Yep. Mhm.
You're saying that you don't function in a space of fear, but the fear of being misunderstood is a fear.
Yep.
And when you don't have the liberty to be able to function in that space, that's problematic.
Yep.
And that's why I say I'm not quite sure if I've overcome that yet because I'm such an empath, and I think this is an issue with empaths. I'm also an introvert like yourself. When you deal with empaths, empaths are very careful in how they communicate with people because they are people pleasers and they don't want to create a confrontational relationship whereby now I have to defend myself. I don't want you to feel a certain way about me. I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying, so I'm just not going to approach it at all.
Yep.
And I think that contributes to so many unwell moments in our lives
Yep.
even as we progress and matriculate through life and want to become this purposeful woman and want to become the person that God wants us to be and wants to do the things that God has created us to be. But we also don't understand, or we forget, that God created community. And whether we want to or not, you're going to have to interact with other people. And you're going to have to figure out a really great way to communicate with them. And you're going to have to invite God into those conversations so that your conversation can be useful and effective.
Yes.
I said all of that to say that I really admire you for even becoming aware of needing that help.
Yeah.
That area so that you can communicate better.
One thing about me, I'm very self-aware, and my value, there's a spirit in me of, I just despise like lying and deceitfulness and people who don't who kind of walk in a complex of someone else. And so my face and my body language is like, you're not for real. What who hurt you? And I immediately want to go there. And so I knew, because I wanted to serve the higher earner, I needed to learn how to communicate with them. Mm-hmm. And especially if I'm trying to become one. So there was a level of relatability that I wanted to express, but I also wanted to stop being scared to be misunderstood. Stop being scared of feeling like you're going to say something and now you have to build out this whole legal case of how you did not mean it that way. Right. And that comes from CYA and corporate, where you make a mistake and now you're blamed for the result. Yeah. And now you have to build a case of why you shouldn't be at fault. Right. You don't have to operate like that anymore. And so I needed to learn, I needed a space to say, almost like, am I tripping about this scenario? Tell me what I did wrong, what I did right, and what I should do more of. And it's just starting to help me just be a better, be better and vocal about. It goes back to boundaries when you're a service provider, because at the end of the day, people gonna people. You don't know what their mental health journey is. You don't know what their self-awareness level is. You don't know what they're investing in. You don't know if they're trying to manipulate you, because that's a big thing.
Big time.
People are in it to get something for themselves, period.
Right. Manipulation. They're in the are in the business of manipulation.
People are in the business of manipulation. I don't even think it's always intentional. I just think it's just, cultural, industry. Sometimes industries just operate that way. And I feel like I just want people to, I told my husband this the other day. I was watching Clarissa Fields from Detroit. She was on a podcast and she looked at someone in the behind the scenes. She's like, you look like somebody not to play with, but I want to talk to you. I want people to look at me like that. Mm-hmm. Like I'm Nisha, you gonna chop it up with her, you're gonna learn, but please don't play with her like that. Mm-hmm. And that's because I got manipulated so much, mm-hmm. or taken advantage of so much that it's now like a huge area of boundary stopping for me, because it took away a lot. It took money out of my household. Mm-hmm. It added weight to my body physically. Yeah. I had to come out of a lot of confidence issues. So absolutely not. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I realized that high earners are like that.
Yes. Yes.
They have this complex, mm-hmm. of, you can't tell me nothing. Mm-hmm. I know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm on my journey. I'm doing my thing. You're not going to distract me. And I can relate to that. Mm-hmm. But it has to be healthy. Mm-hmm. It has to be respectful, mm-hmm. right? It can't just be about do for me because you paid an invoice or swiped a credit card, but you're not reading your scope of work. Yeah. You're not reading your contract, and you think because you swiped a card, I'm going to do whatever you need. No, ma'am. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of dynamics to, people think like, oh, you just love money. And no, it's people. Yeah. It's relationships, it's interpersonal skills, it's communication. And then I take those interactions and just bring my technical skills into it.
Which I think, and this is the educator in me, which I think all has to be taught. People don't come into just knowing how to do everything you just said.
Nope.
And that's where the manipulation piece comes into play, because I also think that people are taught how to be manipulative. So somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook had posted sometimes. They said, "Do you think I can't remember exactly the way it was, and it's completely separate from what we're talking about, but we can kind of translate it into what we're talking about here." They said, "Do you think that people are intrinsically nice, or do you think that they are do you think people are intrinsically nice, or do you think that they are like taught that way or normally mean or something like that?" Can't remember how she's put it, but my answer to this, what she said, which I didn't know at the time, kind of aligned with the answer that she personally gave,
Mm-hmm.
was that I think everybody is intrinsically nice. I think that at some age we are taught to be who we are
Yep.
because we are around influences. That's why children at a young age, all children are cool as a fan
Yep.
until they are raised by people who influence them in the direction that they end up going into.
Yep.
And so I also think that with manipulators, and I've been in a lot of network marketing. When I was going through all this, my chasing phase, chasing,
That's
you know, this,
chasing.
that, and the
Yeah.
other, I was probably in maybe 6, 7, 8 different network marketing companies. I learned how to sell from my mother. My mother can sell. We used to always tease my mom. She could sell a freezer to an Eskimo. Like my mother can sell.
Yes.
And so I kind
Yes.
of picked that up from her. And I just was in a lot of different, but I also know I learned in network marketing, and this is not anything bad about network marketing, because network marketing has its place in what it does.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, network marketing, you're taught how to be a manipulator,
Yep.
taught how to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate people. And I think that goes back to what you were talking about. And like, I don't think people even realize that they're manipulating because they've been taught that it's a way of life. So they don't
It's just a training system, right?
right.
And you have to have an identity to know that I don't like this part of the training system.
Mhm.
I'm going to put my own sauce on it. I'm going to be authentic. I like what you did with the little spreadsheet, the little drawings. I'm going to take that. But as far as omitting information
Mhm.
or doing a presentation or inviting someone to a meeting and not telling them what the meeting is about,
Yeah.
I don't like that,
Yeah.
because you got to give people choice.
Mhm. Right.
Give them the
Yeah.
choice
Yeah.
to say yes or no.
Yes or no.
Give them the option. Who are you to take the option? And this is what I didn't like about corporate America. You're taking away the choice of me saying yes to an opportunity versus giving me all the details. I don't like that.
Because people don't like to hear no.
People don't, but we're gonna hear it.
They don't want to hear no.
You're not wanted everywhere.
It's like, well, I'd rather you tell me no than to have you come to a meeting where I don't even have your attention anyway, because the moment they get in there, they already know what you ain't up to nothing good.
And ain't nothing wrong with a no, not right now.
Correct.
A no, not right now could mean, fam, you need to work on your skills a little bit, because you're probably going to come into the next 2, 3, 5, 10 people who you're going to have to run this script through again. And that 10th person is waiting on the more skilled you, not the less skilled you. So the no's are part of the formula, but you trying to take A out of the formula to get to C.
Yeah.
That math doesn't work.
So again, I think that goes back to what you just said. I think that goes back to, okay, if you're going to give somebody a no, then I think it's also a requirement to do what you said, to give them a no with some elaboration, right?
Yep.
I'm telling you no because of this.
Because
No, because with this is what needs to happen. And then maybe that no will eventually go to a maybe. And then, okay, this is how you do when you get a maybe. And maybe is not a no, but a maybe isn't quite a yes. So maybe there's a requirement on you to do a little bit more persuasion, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's a learning opportunity to help people. So that's why, again, the educator like antenna in my mind. But what I was gonna say, and I'm gonna say this before I forget, is when you were talking about the no's, that also can come from this. This is why people have to be aware of where they are, where they've come out of. what is needed to be changed in order for them to get to the next level, because that can be from a place of rejection and abandonment, which is an emotional unwellness.
Exactly.
That if you are not aware of that, or if you are aware of it and you choose to ignore it, it's going to be a hindrance as
Mm-hmm.
you try to move forward, because as you've mentioned, everybody is not going to say yes to you, which also, this is just a side note, or I was talking about this because I saw this TikTok video or Instagram video of this mother who got really upset because her child didn't get an award in school in Atlanta. And she was just going off, and the principal was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," or the teacher or somebody. But it goes back to this whole idea of us making kids think that everybody deserves an honorable mention. Or what? Like, I used to be a teacher. Everybody in my class was not going to get an award. And here's the thing, in the school system, sometimes teachers are taught, please honor all your children. That's not doing anything good.
Yeah.
Giving the child a standard to try to aim for.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's also and so those children, emotionally immature, emotional, what's the other word I'm looking for? Emotional immaturity, I'm just going to say emotional unwellness for lack of the other word I was looking for. But they grow up to be people, adults, because all children are little children. They're little people.
Yeah.
They grow up to be these adults who look like what we just described.
Yep.
People who can't take no because they have this spirit of rejection tied to them because they didn't get an award when they were 10.
Yeah.
You didn't earn an award.
Or we're getting, no, you can't have that right now. No, we can't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not in the budget. No, that position has been filled internally. No, we're going to go with another vendor. No, we're going to go with another contractor. Mm-hmm. No, your budget is too high. No's are going to come.
Yeah.
And what I've learned to value about the no, that if God gave me a no today, mm-hmm. please know that yes is coming. Mm-hmm. So who am I to say that you should be the yes and you should be the yes? No, maybe he's protecting me from something. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a client who doesn't respect women. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They need a service done, but they don't respect mothers. Maybe God is saying they're going to take advantage of you. Right. Let's shut this door right now. It's
always a protection in some form.
It's always a protection in some form. And maybe I just choose to let myself think that, but he hasn't failed me yet. Mm-mm. So, and then I want to go back to the point of nice versus kind. Mm. Somebody asked me, are you nice or you, because somebody called me nasty nice once. And I was like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And I lead with respect. As long as you don't touch me, I will never disrespect you. Because I've seen disrespect unnecessarily, right? I think everybody should walk away from Nisha knowing that she has always been kind to me because I'm focused on other. Nice is about people pleasing, internal, how I feel.
Right.
But I'm kind because you're going to walk away with me with respect, but you're going to know not to play with me. Mm-hmm. Meaning you could tell me anything. It won't be blasted. You can call me every name under the bus. You're going to leave me with respect because that's what I would desire.
Right.
And so when it comes to, this is why I'm so confused why we are still so open to giving our money to people who don't look like us, because they don't lead with an other-centered relationship. They lead with the transaction, what they can get out of you.
Yeah.
Yet you want me to let you manipulate me when they're directly trying to manipulate you. Mm-hmm. And so, again, therapy is a great space to talk out, like, was this interaction something I'm tripping about, or did I set a good boundary? Because sometimes it does come from a place of anger because I'm a pattern thinker. Well, I saw this, and this was the result of that. Is this happening again?
I like so.
Again.
Thank you so much for saying that. because this is the message that I want all of the women and men or whomever else, whoever is listening to this. The need for therapy has been taboo because for decades it's been tied to the crazy factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I go to therapy and people gonna think I'm crazy. I think now we're coming into. I was talking to a therapist on my platform a couple of episodes ago, and we both agree that I think we're getting to a place where people are becoming a little bit more open to therapy. I said if it's one thing that this current generation is doing right, and I promise I can't think of too many things current generation doing right, child. They crazy. But if it's one thing this current generation is doing right, I think that the parents of this current generation, because they're younger,
Mm-hmm.
we're a little bit more open to therapy and different things like that. They are providing that as an option for their children. And so it's become
Mm-hmm.
more of a talking topic in the household as opposed to when we were growing up when therapy was never a talking option because back then it just 30 years ago it wasn't a thing to talk about therapy,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think but what I like about what you just said is we don't have to always default to therapy when something is wrong with us.
Mm-mm.
Therapy can also be used as just a communication outlet. And this is why it's good to have a therapist on retainer or a therapist that you can contact when you need to. And there are a lot of therapists who put themselves in that position where they work with somebody for a long time. And I mean, I have one right now. I can email her, hey, I need to talk to you, and we can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for situations like this, because I think when we take it out of that whole concept of or that confinement of I'm not going to therapy because there's nothing wrong with me and switch it out for what you just said in that therapy is really great because you had a recent experience and you want to check in with somebody who can give you an unbiased opinion and
Mm-hmm.
give you insight into whether or not you tripping
Yep.
based on this. Is this, because and then let's just be honest, as we do that, perhaps the therapist's job is to then come back and be like, well, why do you think that or whatever? And they're
Mm-hmm.
going to do their therapy job. But to know that as you are going through these moments of questioning and having these interactions with people and possibly trying to build your way of relating to other people, it's okay to go to therapy and sit down and talk with a licensed professional to check and make sure that just the way that you're looking at things are healthy.
Yeah. Or wrong.
I like that. I like that. I hope hopefully that's a breakthrough for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. Just because we're living in a jacked up world now. Like this world is so crazy that therapy should never be a taboo subject or topic anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be able to sit down and communicate with people that are not directly our peers
Yep.
or someone who's going to always tell us what we want to hear. We
Yeah.
need to be able to sit down and just because therapy is taught, communication is taught therapy,
That's it.
and taught therapy helps with what we're going through. So I like how we were able to tie that all in. Thank you so much. That segment was amazing. I have a couple more things I want to hit on quickly, but and we may have talked about this. I cannot remember because girl, we
Mm-hmm.
have talked about so much stuff. It's so good. But I do want to hit on this because we're Black women. Both of us are Black women. Do you see a pattern when it comes to our financial habits?
Absolutely. I think we're growing out of the I don't need that right now. Like, so when I was doing the personal finance appointments, I was getting a lot of, we don't need that right now. My kids will have scholarships and college funding. And now we see that Project 2025, they're trying to get rid of, they didn't even want to get rid of our student loans. They're trying to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education, which takes away from
Isn't
Title.
that crazy?
It's crazy.
Who
So,
wants to get rid of the U.S. Department of
how do you,
Education in the United States of America?
which means that I believe the goal is for education to be privatized.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can afford it
Or
or
you,
you will become a laborer.
yep.
What does that sound like?
Mm-hmm.
We're going back to a time when what? And now they're loosening the child labor laws.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like I see a lot of millennial women because that's my audience.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming out of this I don't need that right now. And it's becoming more of I should have listened 5 years ago. So a lot more financial awareness, really bad patterns. And I even have this issue. We're trying to do too much at the same time instead of focusing, right? So we want to pay down debt. We want to buy investment property. We want to invest. We want to save. We want to build up wealth for our kids. We have to focus on one lane, dominate, and then move on to the next. Because unless you have multiple streams of income coming in to fund these goals, you're going to burn yourself out and wear yourself thin. And that's unhealthy altogether. Because all that's going to happen is your partner, your spouse, your children going to end up cashing in that life insurance policy. Because heart disease is real, right? Stress is real, a real thing. So trying to do too much. And then also, I would say we don't believe in ourselves enough to say that that's not in my budget. Let me come back to it. Like that, the confidence in saying that, it's just non-existent for women, because we see that the problem is we see everybody else's highlight reel on social media. We're not seeing that old girl went through chemo. Old girl, the other coach, domestic violence issues. Your other coach lost a child or has a child in the hospital. You don't know what they're dealing with behind the scenes or what life has hit them with to come to this point in their life. So you're trying to recreate a financial journey that mimics theirs, when that is so dangerous. Because if they went through the downs to get to some yeses, you got to take that too. So do you really want to replicate somebody else's journey instead of just defining your own? No. So just stop looking at everyone's highlight reel and trying to replicate a lifestyle that's honestly fake. Because I see the P&Ls, I see the bank accounts, I see the numbers, right? But I'm also very aware that we as consumers are attracted to a certain thing, a certain look,
image,
a certain aesthetic.
We're attracted to image.
And it's hard for us to, especially women. I don't think women are great at compartmentalizing. I think men are better. We have a harder time looking to say that, yes, always in luxury, always traveling, always got the bag. But what's missing? Not to say that it's always negative, but what is not being shown to me? We don't split that up. And I think we have to do that because it's safer. It takes away from this imposter syndrome. Like, why is my life not ahead? Baby, you're doing great. I tell people all the time, like,
especially if the fact that you aren't so much further ahead because you're actually doing it in an authentic way. You're doing it in a way that is correct, right? Or as the Bible says, with Christ, if you're going to also want to experience the glory of God, you also are going to have to experience the sufferings of Christ, right? So if you, and trust me, I've fallen into that, Nisha. I've fallen into the whole, I remember having a conversation with a therapist. When I first moved to Chicago, I was having a conversation with a therapist, and I told her, I said, I just feel like I should be further along in my life. Like, I'm 45, and I just don't feel like, mind you, I had just graduated. I was just graduating with a PhD, right? Like,
doctor.
I'm like, I just don't feel like I need to be further along. And the response that she gave me, I remember to this day. She said, to whose measurement?
To whose measurement?
Like, whose measurement? She's like, Makeba, I get it. I'm not trying to say that what you're saying is not a real thing. It's real to you. She said, but I also want to ask you, whose barometer are you measuring yourself up against? And if I'm honest, this is where the Lord birthed this. Not long after this is where the Lord birthed out of me the ministry that I'm currently birthing, which is called Purpose Over Popularity. Because at that moment, I went through a season of time where I was following what social media was showing me. I was trying to build brands by the social media framework. And I remember I had this encounter with God, and God was like, what I have for you, it don't look like that. What I want you to do, it doesn't look like that because it's not real, Makeba.
Yep.
And so that was kind of where I started going through this journey of him really deeply processing me. And not long after that is when he just dropped in my members purpose over popularity because your purpose is not going to be popular.
Yep.
The road to heaven is narrow.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you think that the road to the purpose that I have for you is going to be wide?
And full of people
Looking like
doing the same
right,
thing.
looking like the same way that
Yeah.
all of that. And I just believe that it's just so unfortunate that we as women and as individuals, social media is great, but social media can be so debilitating for so many people because there's no measure of accountability on social media.
Yeah.
People can just put whatever they want to put out there. And as we've mentioned, image is such a big thing that even in the church of God, like we have spiritual leaders who are leaning into this imagery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, you starting to look like the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I just think that it's such social media can be just so debilitating because as you've mentioned, we're looking at what people are putting out there and we're wanting our lives to reflect that in some way, not 100%, but in some way we're wanting because these people are making us believe that this is where you're supposed to be and this is how you're supposed to get there.
Yeah. And you have to have, like, for me, I set up focus on my social media, Facebook. After 2 hours, that bad boy that cuts off. And it's not, and when I start to have these thoughts about, I think she lied. That ain't real.
Right.
Unfollow, unfriend.
Amen.
Because it's distracting.
It is.
And
Amen.
it's not what you came on here for. But
Mhm.
if you're constantly seeing, and another thing, it's just healthier for me if I'm constantly seeing messages of someone posting something that's not in alignment with what I know them to be,
Yeah.
unfollow, unfriend, because it's unhealthy for me.
Correct.
It's disrupting my spirit and energy.
Correct.
You can keep doing your thing, friend,
Right.
but I don't want to be disrupted with that.
Yeah.
And it goes the other way. Like if you're following a certain coach, or for my industry, you're following a certain influencer, content creator, and you're like, man, once you start saying that, unfriend, unfollow, because that's not my purpose. I'm supposed to be on here teaching. I'm supposed to be on here building community. I'm supposed to be keeping up, abreast of what's happening. Once I'm starting to get like, I want that. No, ma'am.
Yeah.
Get off of it. Because like you said, it's a good and a bad, but you have to set the standard and the limit. They're not going to set it.
Yeah.
They want you to consume as much as possible.
Yeah. And ask God for that spirit of discernment.
Yes.
Like ask God, I feel like we all have a certain level of spiritual discernment, but I think that it goes deeper. And we ask God for spiritual discernment, observation, the ability to observe and
Yes.
to be able to understand what to do with the observation that He's revealing to you. Ask God for that.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I'm big on what you just said. I will unfollow people in a minute just because in my spirit, I don't even know them from nobody.
No.
I don't know them. So I don't know what to measure them up. I don't know if it's real or not, but I know my spirit is unsettled when I come across your profile and I'm like, this seems weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really big on that. And I think that just as we're talking about wellness, unwellness, financial habits, that goes into that is where, from a financial standpoint, we overextend ourselves because we're looking at something that's fake.
Yeah.
That's not true, or might not even be in alignment with where God is taking you. And that's part of like what God is, giving me to do and how I'm becoming more knowledgeable of the direction that He's sending me, and is helping women to just understand what is for you.
Yep.
How, in the origin of the purpose of God, what did He create you? How did He create you to contribute to that purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one shared, unified purpose. How did He create you to contribute to it?
Yeah.
Don't worry about how girlfriend over here doing it. Don't worry about how he doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Worry about how they doing it. Because if they're doing it honestly, they're contributing the way they feel like God has created them to contribute.
Exactly.
But if you don't contribute the way you're supposed to, then something is missing.
Exactly.
And the shared unified purpose of the world is not being fulfilled because you're too busy trying to do what they do.
Yep.
And so I just think it's just very important for us. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. Thank you. Child, this has been a really great conversation. Just really great. Couple more questions. Can you provide some financial wellness tips for our listeners? Just give me 2, 3.
I'm going back to the basics. I'm a believer in budgeting, and a budget is nothing but an extended bill list of where your money is going. And if you have like a gap or a shortfall or even an influx, right? The purpose of a budget is a plan for what you're going to do with the money coming in and going out. That's it. You control it. And if we really think about it, the reason why any of us have ever been able to make money at a job is because a company put that position on the budget. Mm-hmm. So how dare you bring in cash flow into your household and have no accountability over it and think that abundance is supposed to come from it? Mm. You're not a good steward, but you want more of it. Mm. That makes no sense to me. Mm. And so don't give the word, I don't care what you call it. I don't care what Netflix calls it, YouTube, whoever, a bill list, a list of expenses and income sources, extend it out for the year so that you can get clarity. How much do I need to live on? Mm-hmm. How much do I need to save to get to a particular goal? Whatever the goal is, don't put a limit on it. How much fund money do I need? How much do I need to fund my travel goals? That's the purpose of a budget. And especially in business, right? For those of us who have 1099 income coming in that's supporting households, you got to be even more clear on what's happening, because now you have the IRS and the state in your budget. And if you really truly want like a system to run without you actively sitting in it, you need a budget. How much in labor do I need? How many people do I need to hire? What does my tech stack look like? What is that going to cost me? That requires a simple budget and forecasting, because at the end of the day, I believe that once you sit down and focus and say, I'm going to be a good steward over what's coming in, you are going to attract more. And so for the more that's coming, you got to act like it's on the way. Mm-hmm. So why don't you have a 7-8 figure budget? You saying you want a 7-8 figure business, but you have not put it on paper. What are you going to do with the money? Mm-hmm. Why would an organization give you a 7-figure grant and you don't know what you're going to do with it? Right. Why would the state or the county give you an 8-figure contract and you don't know what to do with it? I wouldn't give it to you. Mm-hmm. So if I feel like if God gave you a vision, it is your duty to implement it, or else it will leave you and go to somebody else.
Amen.
Because some of us have seen ideas that we didn't implement because we either sat on it, didn't do right by it, and now someone else is flourishing in their highlight reel. Yeah. And you're like, man, I'm better than that. Very great communicator. I can do better. Well, what you do with the vision? Mm-hmm. Did you do what you're supposed to do? Nope. So I'm going back to the basics. Do a budget. Get clear on how much is required of you to live, and then start planning for the stuff that you want. It's really that simple. So if you know, like, I'm introverted, I like to take a trip every 90 days. It helps me to reset my energy. It helps me to shift my environment. But also, I just need a break sometimes from just talking constantly, and I want to see a new environment. I got to build that into my budget. Yeah. So when it comes to, people are like, well, how can you take off 90 days a year? Because I have it in my budget.
I budgeted for it.
Right. I know that if I work a 6-month contract, I'm going to work a little bit more for that time off. Mm-hmm. And so that time off is going to sit in a reserve, a high yield savings account, and I'm chilling. I'm not opening up my books until the next 30 days because I budgeted. So don't try to do all the things. I'm a believer in learning what works for people. Are you an app person? Are you a software person? Are you a notebook person? Or a good old spreadsheet? I'm a spreadsheet person, and I'm not doing all the things because I can't commit to it. I'm gonna give up. I'm not gonna stick to it. So knowing what works for you and then keeping it very simple. The easier it is for you to implement it, the more you'll keep up with it. And then it's really just about check-ins and using like space of accountability. So for our personal finance clients, we are required to do a budget because we cannot give investment advice without doing a budget. And then once we do a budget, we recommend let's touch base every quarter. Do you think people do that? No.
Mm.
And I always tell them it's not about like holding you to like a jail cell of numbers. It's to say, check in. How's everything going? You still at your job? Did you get a bonus? Any trips coming up? Have a new baby? Things like that, because stuff costs money in America.
Yeah.
And so we have to use a combination of time and planning to hit our goals. Stop overcomplicating it. Stop overcomplicating it. And I'm not going to overcomplicate it, because if I complicate it, you ain't going to stick with me. You're going to find another resource.
Correct.
Because your excuse is it's too complicated.
Too difficult.
It's difficult to stick to.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is to make every interaction seamless. You don't want to touch the spreadsheet? I do it. Just jump on a call with me every month.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I like to feel people out to figure out what's going to work with them, even if it's a venting session and I'm literally just taking notes and they're getting stuff. Oh, girl, you ain't got to do that. We'll set that up for you.
Yeah.
It'll be done. I'll keep you up to date. And sometimes we need that accountability, especially the more money we make. We need implementers in our circle, not just educators or lecturers.
Yeah.
Because we know a lot already. Mm-hmm. I think we're knowledge overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
We need implementation. And then we need somebody to hold us accountable. Where you said you wanted to hire an executive assistant. When we doing that? When we going to put them on payroll? Well, I recommend if you do it by June, we can get you a tax break. It's those type of high level implementation strategies that high earners need to get stuff done. Otherwise, if you leave it to their vices, it'll never get done.
I agree. Definitely. That was great. So, like, girl, you talking to me. You talking to nobody else. If don't nobody else listen to this podcast and they talking about she ain't talking to me, you talking to me. Because I'm just at that place in my life where literally the next 5 years are just so critical for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I have a very clear vision. I know what God is giving me to do. I know how he's going to progress that. But I also know that there's a lot of responsibility on me from a financial standpoint that I've never quite tapped into in the past. And fortunately, God has been with me. I've never been a person who writes bad checks or, has been very like, bad with my money. But I also know that with what's the word I'm looking for? With when God evolves you, that's not the word I'm looking for, but when he takes you higher, it comes with a certain level of responsibility.
Yeah.
And that responsibility, as you mentioned, comes with learning, but it also comes with doing.
And building up your all-star team of professional experts. Like if I think about the ideal high earner, they probably have a therapist, an accountant, an advisor, an attorney, a pediatrician if they have kids, an OB, a good physician. You better be building up your network of all-star professionals that you can go to in the event that you have a situation happen in your life and you need an expert to come in and help you run the play. Because I do believe that's what society is moving towards, where we already it's a battle for healthcare, right? Education is kind of like iffy. We don't have, the teachers aren't getting their respect or money. So we're going to have to start to build in like house managers, a concierge team. Like it's becoming either pay to play or don't pay at all. Work, support the high earners. And so you need an attorney. you need a physician. You need every expert that you could possibly think of in the event that you come into a lot of money, need to spend a lot of money, or you have to issue a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to do it alone. That's the thing. We all got licenses in our communities. We all got experience and expertise. Leverage it.
Okay. Well, I didn't put this last question on the list that I sent you, but it is something that I ask all of my guests at the end. Imagine you're sitting next to your 21-year-old self.
Mm.
What would you tell her?
Buy the building. Ask for 20,000 more, and buy the property for your mama, like you thought to.
What do you think held you back at that time from doing any of that?
Rejection, the no, getting the no on the increase. I asked for the money, but only asked for 10. Because, and the result of that was the controller saying, you're lucky to even be being considered. And I didn't know how to process that.
Because of your age?
No, because I was Black. I think.
Okay.
I think. Because I was never taught negotiation. So I was like, let me just try something.
Yeah.
So
many of us aren't taught, and that's the thing. Many of us aren't taught how to negotiate anything, not even our salaries at work.
With confidence. And don't waver.
Yeah.
Don't waver. And what's crazy, and if you are a Black parent and you aren't teaching your child to negotiate, it's going to take so much net worth out of their portfolio in the future. Because in our households, we're taught to shut up. So when, as an accountant, I'm going to see the budget. Why would you just not pay me what I asked for? Because I'm going to see the budget of what I could have been paid.
Yeah.
You know how stupid that is?
Yeah.
So we have to equip our kids with more than just, and I love prom. I love it. More than just designer clothes. Like there's a level of respect that you are going to get despite how you look or what your gender is when you know what you're talking about and you know how to speak up.
Yeah.
And so when I ask for the extra money because I'm being promoted, why wouldn't I get more money? It takes me back to all the struggle I had to go through to pay for bills because I didn't have the extra money. And so ask for the extra money. They got it in the budget. Buy the asset because you're going to be tired of working eventually. And then if it's in your belly to do something for your parent, just do it. Don't wait on them. Because you don't know what they're sitting on, what fears they're sitting on that you could potentially just help them transition with. So that's my biggest thing.
Lord Jesus. Girl, what's next for you? How can people reach you? Or how can they follow you?
Well, right now I am blessed to be teaching accounting to interns at a nonprofit in Chicago this summer. So I'll be getting them prepared for their internships. I'm also working with nonprofits over the next 3 to 6 months to organize their financials, but I'm pretty much on all social media platforms as Polished CFO. The best thing to do is find one of my links and book a call. I don't give advice or strategy without talking to you first because it has to be a mutual agreed understanding that we should work together. And then outside of that, we just kiki on social media. That's it. Chop it up.
Well, y'all, first of all, I better see so many comments on the YouTube channel. I better see some comments on, I don't even know if I can see the comments on Apple Podcasts, but I know I better see something. Because this, and I say this all the time, I say this all the time about I do some dope episodes. Like God has been so good in since this podcast launched in January to connect me with some really positive people, communicators, conversationalists, just great content putting out there. I get so much good feedback from people who say, "Oh, that episode was so great. Oh my God. Oh, it's so good." La, la. But this was just amazing to me. Um, I really appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate your transparency, your energy. I appreciate you as a Black woman coming into who you are and doing it with such confidence and courage.
Hmm.
I really appreciate that. I thank you for talking. Um, I just thank you for talking on all from a lens of all different wellness perspectives because that
Hmm.
was one of the things that I also wanted to just tie into that where nothing is ever separate.
Nope.
If there's an unwellness in one area, you better believe that in some way at some point it's going to become an unwellness in another area. Just because we are one person, one body, God made us to work in tandem with everything in our bodies. And so financial wellness is no different. When we're broke, when we're like they say, broke, disgusted, and whatever the other thing was.
Busted.
Broke, busted, and disgusted. When you broke, busted, and disgusted, baby, everything is off. You don't want to talk to nobody. You pissed off. You you don't even want
Yeah.
to God, I ain't got nothing to say, you know? So, I think financial wellness is that's on the top. I think that's very important, for us to really put some intentional effort behind. So again, look for Policy CFO on the, social media platforms, connect with her, follow her if you're not ready to connect with her, at least follow her, see what she's talking about, and then just decide what you're wanting to do at that point in time. But you guys, that's all we got for this episode, the podcast episode. I don't even know what the name of it's gonna be yet. I come up with the names of my episodes after I have time to stew in it and sit with it for a while. But
Mhm.
this episode, part 1 and part 2, they have been amazing. And so, it's me, Dr. Makeba, your host from the Healthy Woman Podcast. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give me a comment, take a look at both parts. Let me know what you thought about them. Share this out with someone who you really care about in terms of helping them and their financial journey, their financial wellness. And then if you're on the Apple Podcast streaming platform or Spotify, please do me a favor. Give us a comment, give us a follow, share it out, whatever, all the things. Just let us know that you're here. I really appreciate you sticking with us in this episode. Thank you so much for being a part of the Healthy Woman Podcast family. And as always, please remember that I love you so very much. And I thank you for everything that you do for this podcast to make it such a success in its own space. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Be safe. Peace.